Hey, morning, everyone. As Jerry was saying, I'm Brad. I've been with the company for 12 years. I'm a coordinator and as well as the UAV pilot here in Saskatoon.
My name is Larry Laxdal. I've been with PCL for 8 years. I was in Winnipeg for 3, and then the other 4 down here in Regina, where I'm heading up the drone program.
So today we're going to run through PCL's drone program, which districts are using drones, which ones are using, some of the software and processing, some in-field examples. The riveting part is the certification, which Larry's going to touch on, lessons learned, and then questions. So first, some background on PCL. We're 31 districts, and 12 of our districts have adopted UAVs. 47 pilots overall in all the companies. Those districts include Edmonton, Calgary, here in Saskatoon, Larry's team down in Regina, over in Ottawa, and then for the states, we've got Orlando, Minneapolis, our head office in Denver, place that all PCLers want to go to, Honolulu, Los Angeles, Bakersfield, and then finally back up to Seattle. In terms of Saskatchewan implementation, so we have adopted UAVs on a lot of our projects here in both Saskatoon and Regina, down in Moose Jaw. We've got 6 UAV pilots, myself in Saskatoon, 5 of them in Regina, probably to handle the beast of a matrice over there. We've got 2 UAV systems, 41 recorded flights. We started flying in April this year. And from what we've been told by Transport Canada, we're the first construction company in Canada to obtain a long-standing or a standing SFOC, which SFOC stands for Special Flight Operations Certificate. There's a big process to apply for this. You need a lot of supporting documentation, a lot of what you're using for UAVs, your training certs, and it's a long process. Larry will touch on that a little bit later. But it helped us out a lot that we had our national headquarters apply for this for us. So we have an SFOC, all the pilots are listed on it, and you can just, not just go fly, but we're one step closer to flying. So why does PCL go to all the trouble of obtaining the SFOC and purchasing these drones? We're already doing most of this stuff that we're going to run through today in the field effectively with our teams. Drones just take things to the next level. Oh boy. So the top reasons we're using them for pursuits, external communications, site logistics, surveying, progress tracking and reporting, safety. That's a big one for us. We engineer out the hazard and we reduce worker exposure. So as opposed to setting up a swing stage or a scaffolding to inspect a bridge or inspect a building, we're sending the UAV up. It's got 4K video and high resolution photos. It's everything we need for inspections, which takes us into the health, safety, and environmental inspections we're using for QA/QC, pre-pour, and then finally marketing. But Larry's going to introduce you to these 2 UAVs we have on the table, and also some of the data processing and the programs we're using.
So tech specs is the exciting part. There's a lot of drones out there nowadays. Does anybody have one at home? A lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about, you could accomplish with a home drone. These ones we've got the Phantom 4 Pro and then the Matrice. The Phantom's about a $2,000 drone and then the Matrice is about $10,000. What you're really looking at though is the camera. And I should press the next button here. You'll notice that the technical specifications appear pretty much the same. With the bigger drone, you're getting better wind resistance, the ability to change out the camera. So right now it's pretty standard camera that I don't actually have attached. But if you want to switch it out for a thermal camera or you want to switch it out for a 30 times zoom camera, you can do that. It's got a few more collision avoidance sensors built into, but the key part to both of these drones is just the high resolution camera, because what we're doing on the next part with the software is using photogrammetry, which anybody familiar with that term? It's been around for a long time. It's using photos to generate data. In our case, we're going to be generating a lot of 2D but also 3D data just by taking a lot of photos. The software side, of course, you can take these drones out, fly them like you're playing your Xbox or PlayStation, which is really fun, but you're not going to get the precise photos that you need to generate the data for the post-processing. In the first circle there's the flight planning programs. Drones have been around long enough now that it's really starting to become a mature market for software. There's a lot of software out there, but there's a couple people that are doing it in a big way and really working with a lot of contractors and owners and architects on developing features that help us, and they've done a great job at customizing it. So these flight planning apps essentially enable autonomous flight in drones. You're going to load it up. You'll see a Google Maps type image. Tell it where you want to fly and what type of data you want out. Hit go, stand back. The drone will take off, fly around for 20 minutes, come back, and you've got all your data. So although there's a lot of training and certification that has to go into setting up that flight, the actual process of the flight is extremely easy. The next part is the data processing. So you have all these photos, you've got your video, which is great for a site record. It's fantastic to have video of the whole site, photos from a unique perspective. But to take it to the next level and to start getting some more 3D data, some elevations that you can use for, instead of surveying, you need some sort of processing. So we use a lot of the time AutoCAD software. Recap will generate 3D models, and orthomosaics, which is the term that we use for essentially a Google Maps type image that's a high definition photo that you can zoom in and get some real details. If you'd like to go open source, there's something called WebODM, completely open source, does everything that the big guys do, but is a little bit more cumbersome like open source software often is. You're going to spend anywhere on software from $0 for a WebODM to $20,000 a year, and it's just going to vary on a little bit on functionality, but they mostly do all the same stuff nowadays. And of course, price. Brad's going to talk a little bit about some actual stuff we're doing in the field.
Yeah, so the first slide here is we used our Phantom 4. We flew 3 flights at a remote project in Saskatchewan. And we processed those over 24 hours. This was able to generate a contour map. So our pursuit team used this contour map and our earthworker trade to just get the general lay of the land. Anybody that's familiar with this type of flying and processing, you'll notice there's no ground control points, which that's basically you tie your photos into real world or actual surveyed elevations. In this case, we didn't need that. We just needed, like I said, the lay of the land, the contours. There's also a lot of shrubs and trees in this one, which generally mess up photogrammetry. But it was going through a creek, so we needed to know for access roads and haul roads where to plan. And so in this case, it was perfect for us. The next one is external and client communication. So this is actually the quote at the bottom here is taken from one of our project agreements for the interchange project here in Saskatoon, which both of them are open, partly open. So the first one is aerial photographs of construction sites. So rather than hiring a plane or a photography company with a UAV, we're able to fly our own and get our own photos, send those over to the city. And the second one would be project highlight videos. So we were able to do flyovers of the entire site and then do a video editing all in-house and voiceovers, then post these to YouTube. There's 4 different videos with over 5,000 views to date. Feel free to like and subscribe. The next one is site logistics. Larry mentioned the orthomosaic photo before. So this one is an example in our Orlando project. You guys were able to fly their project site, get real-time construction progress. They've got new laydown areas. Basically, the minute you turn ground, the Google image is out of date. So we use this for plot plans. We keep our plot plans up to date as the site progresses. And they actually overlaid their drawing on top of this real snapshot in time. The one on the right is another snapshot of the McCormick bridge decks. This was a pour that we did. This pour started at 6 o'clock at night and ended at 7 in the morning. So we wanted to make sure the guys were efficient. Their pumps were set up in the right spot. Testers were in the right spot. So we basically flew the Phantom up and had live video streamed down to the superintendent, as he was able to watch it on the iPad as this kind of pour is starting and progressing. And then we also sent this video off to our other districts. Some of the other teams were doing bridge deck pours. They just use this info and it just gave them an upper edge for planning their work. Larry's going to touch on some other stuff.
"3D data I mentioned earlier. This data here is generated from the same type of flights that you would take to generate your 2D images, but programs like Autodesk Recap are able to stitch it together, get the point cloud out of it, and then of course turn it into the 3D model, which is great to look at. People love to see a 3D model, but obviously we need some more information out of that. Almost all of these programs now, as soon as you do a flight, you upload the data. Project teams, consultants, anybody that you give access to is able to log in and check out the site. If you want to see the volume of a stockpile or an excavation, 5 clicks around that pile and it generates in real time the volume. You can compare it to that same stockpile or excavation yesterday. Features that they're starting to implement here is you can actually load your final design grades into the software, and you can see your cut fills for the whole site as you go. Many of our projects in the States are flying projects on a daily basis to keep track of these things. Another great one here, building facade inspections. As Brad was saying, if you don't want to get up on the swing stage and you want to do a quick inspection of the building, bring up the drone. This one is just looking at if some drainage caps were installed in Regina, and it's a much quicker way than setting up swing stages and making consultants spend cold winter days outside in Regina. Pointcloud Revit integration. Of course, everybody knows if you've got the Pointcloud, you can easily drop in your 3D models. Both good for visualization and then coordination. Owners like to see generally what this thing is going to look like. Of course, you can, and we have in the past, used 3D scanners for this type of thing. But what the drone really enables you to do is capture a much larger area much faster than setting up a 3D scanner where you might have objects in the way and you're going to do multiple setups to capture the same thing. I'm going to end on a little bit of a less exciting part, but certification and approval process. So we heard earlier, soon you'll be able to go to Sask Polytech and get a lot of this taken care of. First, you need some sort of training, which they will provide. There's a lot of things out there now because drone flying is becoming a lot more popular and there's a lot of regulations around it. What we opted to do is send our pilots to a flight school, essentially. Out of Winnipeg, it was an online course. It's about 30 hours. It runs you through all of the information that NAV Canada and Transport Canada require you to be familiar with. You don't have to actually go to one of these courses to be able to fly a drone, but it's an easy way for the pilots to be able to prove to NAV Canada that you are familiar with all of the regulations that they come around asking. And actually, that is essentially what you would do if you're going to become a pilot. This flight school is the first step that we would do. So if you're looking to do that, maybe start off with drones. Brad talked about the SFOC, which is the Special Flight Operations Certificate, a little bit earlier. We started with our Edmonton office. They compiled the document. It's fairly extensive. It outlines all of your safety requirements, what drones you have, your procedures for flying. It's essentially an execution plan that you're going to follow for each one of your flights so that NAV Canada is confident you're doing it the right way. And then everybody else in your company is able to sign on to that, and then you're responsible to ensure that you're executing according to that document. And now we have a national SFOC, which again probably took about a month to generate. And once that's filed with NAV Canada, you can just update it as you get more drones or more pilots and follow the procedures that you've outlined there. Once you've done that, getting authorized for an actual flight. Of course, it seems like you must just be able to go out and fly, which is not generally the case, particularly in Regina, where the city is fairly small and we've got the airport right next to the city. If you're near an airport, there's some fairly stringent requirements. We actually have to request 7 days in advance, and you might think that you're talking to somebody local, but no, you're talking to somebody in Winnipeg. Brad also has to talk to Winnipeg. They give you authorization to fly, and then 7 days later, when you're ready for your flight, you call up the air traffic control tower, and they will tell you if you're still okay to fly or if there's something in the area. Down in Moose Jaw, actually, we might talk about it a little later, but you're subject to the Air Force restrictions because that's military airspace. And strangely enough, it's much easier to fly there. You just call them up and they tell you if they have an air show that day, and if not, you're okay. If they don't like it, they'll just shoot you out of the air. Logging and documentation, part of your SFOC is talking about the documentation that you're going to keep. There's quite a bit required there. I won't go into a lot of details, but essentially you're logging your drone maintenance, your pilots, your flight time, just like you have a small aircraft almost, and you have to have that on hand and available to Transport Canada or NAV Canada if they ever come asking for it.
So with any implementation of technology, there's going to be some lessons along the way. First one here is insurance certificates. So we have an insurance certificate specific to each drone or UAV. We use that term interchangeably. Some people have a negative connotation around the word drone. But anyways. So serial numbers on these UAVs, they're specific to that insurance certificate. What we found out is you're flying over the city of Saskatoon. Any city-owned or leased property or a public space or a park, they actually need to be named additional insured on that certificate. So to find that out the day you're flying, when you got to talk to your Vancouver office and get them to add them on an insurance certificate is was a fun one. The next one is varied requirements based on location. Larry talked about this a little bit. So I don't need to phone air traffic control. Larry does. The other thing is, well, I guess, yeah, you talked about Moose Jaw already. Again, the city of Saskatoon, you need to fill out a drone flyover application. They need 2 to 3 weeks approval process for that. And there's a lot of departments that get involved when they're reviewing. Obviously, you're flying these UAVs over top of public spaces. They want to make sure everything's okay. It's really tricky to pinpoint a good weather day 2 weeks in advance. So there's usually some reoccurring applications. But you kind of build a rapport with the person at the city, and you can go from there. That kind of ties into airspace clearance. So anybody familiar with Saskatoon, you know, on a good weather day when it's really calm, you're going to see a hot air balloon flying around, and you're going to see the CFSPS police plane. Both these aircraft have right away of the skies. It doesn't matter, they just get it. So we have visual observers with binoculars, and as well as myself, we're always scanning skies to make sure if there's something entering our airspace. We're capped at 400 feet. We can't fly any higher than that. I think Larry's 300 feet. But you always give right away to manned aircraft, which takes us into bird. So there's 2 types of birds. There's curious birds, and then if it's a swallow, it's really aggressive and it swoops at you. Thankfully, we haven't had a bird strike yet, but we've had pelicans, hawks are interesting, and you're in the migration season now, so we've had flocks of geese. On Monday, we were flying at our CN project in Warman, and the visual observer's like, "You see those geese? Like, yeah, they're coming straight towards us." So we just lowered the UAV, and thankfully, no bird strikes. But yeah, that's it for lessons learned. I guess. Still got some time, so maybe we can actually answer some questions.
If not, you can shoot.
If you're talking about the commercial or work flying, let's say I'm a fan of flying things, can I get out and get on the way?
Depending on what you're using it for, there's clubs, like Saskatoon has a club that you can get access to.
You have to be in the location, but I mean, here in the city, can I just fly a drone?
Yeah, not usually. Especially if you're within 5 nautical miles of the airport, you can't bring a drone into the air. And if you do need to get a drone in the air, that's where you need to talk to the Winnipeg office and then Saskatoon.
Drones are a tricky market too because hobbyists don't know that they're supposed to follow these regulations. Companies like DJI are starting to build more protection measures into their drones. For instance, if we try to fly these too close to the airport, it won't let you. You have to actually submit for some special overrides to get it up in the air. And regulations are getting stricter all the time. I know in the States, they're getting a lot stricter. It might come up here to Canada. And I think we're going to see in the machines themselves, they're going to have fail-safes built in that just aren't going to let you fly.
I heard about privacy. They're very, very easy about having full flying neighborhoods and
Yeah, the city actually requires, depending on what you're using your footage for, you have to fill out a film licensing agreement with them. So they want to know exactly what you're doing, why you're flying it, and where that image is going, or if it's video. So, Larry touched on it a bit, but the FAA, so down in the States, it's different where you can't fly over top of anybody, even if they're construction workers wearing hard hats. Thankfully, we can still fly over our sites and equipment, but the States, they basically do their flights in the morning and then at night when everybody's off site.
How do you find your quantity compared to drill? Did you guys compare between drill footage and accuracy and mobile footage?
Great question, which we anticipated. We've never done a stockpile comparison, and we're actually working on that right now. But generally, the type of accuracies that you can expect are going to depend on a couple things. Some of these drones have RTK capabilities. Ours do not. If you do, of course, that increases your accuracy. If you've got ground control points, so just like anything, you can tie it into actual geodetic survey points. That's going to increase your accuracy quite a bit too. So under ideal conditions, if you've got the ground control points and you're flying quite close to the ground, you can expect just about slightly under a centimeter vertical accuracy, or slightly under 2 centimeters vertical accuracy, and then horizontal is kind of around the centimeter, half a centimeter range. That's absolutely ideal. For most things, we're not using ground control points, and if we're out 2 inches or 3 inches, it's not really a big deal for most of these flights.
The other thing too is if you do a stockpile with a GPS, if you're taking so many shots, whereas this thing will take thousands of shots or thousands of points.
If anybody's got any more questions, come find us after. I also saw a really neat looking drone out at the sponsor table, so check them out too. Oh.
Yeah, Jeff from Brant there has a pretty sweet one.
Well, you can come in the race after.
Yeah. We'll give you a head start. Okay.
Thank you.